So who's tired of dragging that water hose around the yard? I know I am, because you can put just so many hoses together, and they're heavy. Then they get caught on this or they get caught on that. And who's tired of the water running off? You go to water and your water just spreads out. Tired of standing there holding the hose when you could be doing something more productive? You know, because it takes a long time to go out and water once or twice a day. And if you have a large yard or a large garden, you can spend hours out there. Time is valuable, like money. Sprinklers waste water. How many times do you go out there and put a sprinkler and it goes like this? How much water is lost each cycle of that sprinkler? So I have a proven solution to the above problems. A self-watering system that's easy to make with readily available materials. Has anyone ever priced a sprinkler or irrigation system for their yard or their flower beds or even their gardens? When having a system professionally installed, it can be quite costly or downright unaffordable. Today, I'll show you how you can build a watering system to fit your needs. The basic instructions are the same, from simple to elaborate. This is what I do right here. I no longer garden in the ground, I container garden. I have 3 rows. These are the materials that are needed to create this system. PVC Schedule 40, 1/2 inch. 10 or 20-foot joints. It comes in a 20-foot joint, or you can buy them in 10-foot joints. You need a shut-off valve for each line. You see I have 3 rows here. So I have a shut-off valve here, here, and here. Now, if you only have 1 row in your garden, you don't need that valve.
Kathy, that's a question you get me wrong. Are those plants just in those buckets, or is the bottom out where the root can go down?
No, I have holes. I'm going to show you my buckets. You need a water hose connector to go from the PVC pipe to the water hose, and you can get brass ones at Centerville Feed. You need T-connectors. You need elbows for the end of the rows. You need splicers. You need end caps, and they're all 1/2 inch. You need a drill bit and a tap, and the tap threads the pipe for the spray nozzles. We have found if you drill that hole just a little bit larger, you can just put that little nozzle in there. And if it drips, so be it. It's in the container. And we use a fan spray nozzle. Now, I don't endorse Lowe's or Home Depot or any of those stores. I just took pictures of these so you would know what you're looking for. And you can see how inexpensive this system is to create. Okay, so your PVC pipe, it comes in 10-foot joints, and it costs $4.71 a piece. So if you have a 20-foot row, there's $10. Y'all may want to take a picture of this with your phone. Okay, so this is your valve. It's a 1/2 inch. They are $2.98 a piece. So you have 3 rows, that's $10. So now you're up to $20, which this is the valve right here. The PVC slips into it. Also, when we did this system, when you work with PVC, there's 2 cans of stuff. One is to clean the pipe, and it's purple, and then one is the glue. We did not do that when we constructed this. And the reason is because it doesn't build up pressure because you have all these little nozzles that are releasing your water. So no pressure builds up, and it's not going to build the pressure and pop apart. So you really don't need to glue it. You don't need to do that step just unless you want to. These are the 1/2-inch T's. These T's connect 2 pieces of pipe and your row. That's the purpose of your T. And they're $1.22 a piece. And a lot of times you can buy them in a bag where there may be 10 of them in there. Here's your elbows. Your elbows help you go around the corner. Here's your end cap that goes on the end. It seals it. It stops the water from going any further down the line. And they're 67 cents a piece. Okay, here's your valve, here's your piece that goes on the end of your system. This just slides on here, and here's where your hose connects. You can get this at Home Depot, and you know, it's this PVC plastic, but you can also get brass at the feed store. They carry them. And these are the jet spray, the sprayers that we use. These are the little sprayers, and you can get these at Home Depot. They have a little, they kind of have like a little point on them that helps you screw it in. And if you drill the hole just a little bit bigger, these will go right into the pipe. Or you can use your tap to make it where it will screw in. And this package is $3.47, and there's 10 in here. This is the swivel piece, and I don't have one. And they're $2.47 a piece. That connects to your hose and your pipe. That's the second slide. So now here's how we have it set up. We have a splitter right here, so I can use this water hose if I want to use it for something else. That connects it to your system right here. You can use a wash machine hose too. That will work. We just took a piece of hose that was like, you know how they'll get kinked and eventually break? He just fitted that and used a clamp right here. And that's how it goes together right there, where the hose goes into this part right here. And there's the shut-up valve. And no, it's not leaking. It rained that day. So I turn the water on and I let it run for 10 or 15 minutes in the morning and 10 or 15 minutes in the evening. Of course, your watering schedule is going to be determined by our dependable, should I say independable, Texas weather. You're now in control of how much moisture your plants receive. The reason that we have these shutoff valves on each row is because I plant my potatoes on the outside row. I may not want to water those potatoes, but I may want to water this other stuff. So I have the option to turn this on and off. This is off. This is on. This goes with the flow of the water. Your on and off valve, which you really need that if you're going to grow root crops. Potatoes do well in these syrup tubs. Sweet potatoes do not do so good because they become a big mass of root. So now you're in control of how much moisture your plants receive, no more wasting water, and all the plants receive the same amount of water. Because like when you go in your garden, say you're watering your plants, you may stand there for 5 minutes watering this tomato, and then you'll go over to this next plant, and you may get distracted. You know, you have no way of gauging that all your plants are receiving the same amount of water. So this gives you control. Your shutoff valves are an important part of the system, especially if you're growing potatoes. It allows you to shut off the flow of water to some of your rows. Some plants require more water than others. This definitely puts you in control by using your valve. The most important part of this is you tie a string around your finger, because inevitably you're going to turn it on, you're going to walk away, you're going to get distracted, and at 10 o'clock at night, your husband is going to say, "Oh, the pump just kicked on. Did you leave the water running?" It happens. It happens. And he knows every time too, because you can hear that pump kicking on. So tie a string around your finger. That'll remind you to go turn the water off. Yes. Yes, that was the next thing I was going to say. You can, yeah, you can add a timer to your system.
I have mine set so it'll come on like
Mm-hmm. Now, they tell you not to water your plants in the evening because it creates a problem. By getting your leaves wet, you introduce man-made problems, fungus, rot, and so forth. With this system, your water is not touching your plant. It's directly into the soil. So when we have 100-degree days, you can bet I'm watering in the evening. I water about 6 o'clock. You know, turn it on, let it run 15, 20 minutes. And my stuff does wonderful. So here's to show you that this system does work. I grow everything in there. The only thing I don't grow anymore is the sweet potatoes. Carrots. And if you'll notice in my tomatoes, I also put 1 or 2 bean seeds because beans fix nitrogen. It's natural nitrogen to your plant. And when we have a storm, thunder and lightning, that also creates nitrogen for your plants. So I kind of like it when it storms. You know, it's beneficial. You see, it works. Now, let me show you one thing. Okay, so this is how the system is. This part here is at the very back. This right here, and there's splitters on here you can see because these are more than 10-foot rows, which this is what it does. This being the outside row, a second row, and a third row here and here. But basically, this is how it looks. And we've created this little diagram if you want to come and look at it more closely. And you just use a little drill. Oh, it won't come on. Probably did, yeah. But they're real simple to make. As you see, they don't cost a lot of money. I have maybe $35 tied up in that. And it has saved me a lot of time. So this is here if anybody wants to look more closely at it. Now my buckets, what we do is we put that PVC across it. This bucket doesn't have any drilled in it, but we just drill a hole and we tie strap this. That's what keeps it from moving. And we do it about every third or fourth bucket. My buckets have holes along the sides and on the bottom. I put pine needles down. That suppresses the weeds. I have no weeding. I have no weeding to do in these containers. I just need to feed them and water them. Yeah, everybody needs food. Everybody needs water for growth. These holes right here are in all of my potato buckets. We take a rod. I don't know if it's a piece of rebar or if it's a piece of pipe, but we stick it through here. And when it's time to dig our potatoes, he pulls up there with the bucket on his tractor and he hooks onto that pipe and he's able to take it and take it over here and we dump them all out. I gather all my potatoes and he does it all in one row. Then I add leaves and stuff back to it. And then next year, and I fill these buckets up with leaves. As soon as our leaves really start falling, I'll start filling my buckets up. I fill it up with leaves, and then in the spring, early spring, February, he goes back with the bucket of his tractor, he refills them, he puts that pipe through here, he's able to lift them and move them back to where they need to be in the garden. Okay, anybody have a question?
You have a little drill a hole in that PVC.
You drill a hole in the PVC pipe. Yeah, we just mark it with a Sharpie, and then we drill it.
There's no nozzle or anything like that.
Yeah, there's these little nozzles that you buy at Home Depot or you know, your garden center. Yes, yes. See, they have a little point on them. And like I said, y'all are more than welcome to come up and look at this stuff.
Okay.
You see?
Okay, that makes
And
sense.
it makes a little, you see it makes a little fan spray
Oh, I see.
like this. So it's in the middle of the bucket and it fans out and the whole bucket gets watered. No, I fill my buckets up with leaves now in the fall. This is a potato bucket. And they'll compress down. So come February, the leaves will be down this far. They've composted themselves. And then I just add sand from my property, mushroom mulch, and leaves. My plants, my other plants, see, this is my row of potatoes. My other plants, those also compost down. So they're full at the beginning of the season. And by the end of the season, they're down to about here. And I just add more leaves to it in the fall. And then in the spring, I may add mushroom mulch or sand. And it works. Now, you might think that containers, like how many times have y'all had potted plants and they get full of ants? That's a big problem. You know how you solve that? You put coffee grinds in your container. And the ants will not go in that container. So I put coffee grounds. Not only does it deter the ants, it's a very good nitrogen source. Well, I use my used ones. I'm not going to, coffees cost too much to, you know, I use my spent coffee grinds.
Potatoes do you plant?
I put 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 eyes, about 5 pieces this big. And I get great big red potatoes out of it. And when I start, I put a little bit of soil, about this much, and I cover them. As they start to grow, I fill it up. And that's the most labor that we do in our garden. That's the only thing that you have to do physical labor for when you're container gardening. Yes.
The only soil you put is start on the base.
On the base for my potatoes, like this much in here.
But the other
And put the
thing-
eyes, cover them, and as they start to grow, then I backfill it.
But the other thing you
But the other stuff I fill up to here.
with leaves and then the sand and.
Well, like these right here, I'm already starting to rake up leaves and put in the top of these containers.
Do you put any soil in there on the bottom when you start?
Well, you can buy soil at
You don't-
the big box
you just
store,
do it
but
with leaves and sand and.
and mushroom mulch, right? Because I'm not going to go out and I'm not going to pay for soil that I can create myself. And if y'all are composting, then you have the perfect soil to put in these containers. Anybody else?
Buckets out there, you had to leave the bottom, and then if I have living lines or whatever, you go in and toss it.
Well, first of all, you shouldn't compost with citrus peels.
Okay, that's not my. I don't.
I mean, well, if you're going to be putting raw materials in here like kitchen scraps and stuff, you're probably going to call all the raccoons in the neighborhood. You're probably going to draw insects. I mean, if you're going to compost, you need to have a separate compost pile and turn it and water it and stuff, because it needs more than just dumping it in a container. It has to be turned. It has to be watered. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Do you layer them? Do you put some in the?
Yeah.
Or you just mix it in?
Trust me, I just put them in there. I don't measure them. I don't, I have a container in my kitchen. It's a little small composting container. It has a lid. I put my grinds in there, and when it's almost full, I take it outside and I dump it in
She's
the
asking, do you
plant.
put it on top of the soil?
You just put it in the top, because anything you put on top, as it's watered, it's going to work its way down into the soil.
So Kathy, is that killing the ants or moving the ants?
I don't have an answer to that. I don't really know.
Probably prevent.
I know it deters them.
Wait, tomato plant.
Okay, that's a good question. If I'm putting determinate, which means they already determined how big they're going to get, some plants only grow this tall. I'll put 2 in there. If it's indeterminate, I only put 1, because they go crazy. And when I put my tomato cage in here, I put 2 legs of the cage outside and I put 1 of the legs outside. And that works well. Okay, we're going to do the next little small program. And like I said, y'all can come up here and look at this. My husband, he's so good to me. He took me to see my family in Florida, dodging the spring storms and then the hurricane, and then August was too hot. We finally were able to slip away and go in February. So as I'm visiting with my aunt, she's the only aunt that I have left out of both sides of my family, she was telling me about when they were growing up. We grew up in upstate New York, and we have always gardened. When my dad was little, from the time he was born, the house that they lived in, they had fruit trees. They also had nuts. They had cherries, plums, and apples. And they also had a chestnut tree. Does anybody know anything about chestnuts? Okay, so I would like to recognize Charlene Manning, Cindy Torno, and Greg Pitts. They are our Master Gardener members that have advanced training in trees. I don't know if they've learned anything about the chestnut tree, but I'm going to give you all a little introduction. But it was just kind of ironic that here my aunt is telling me all this stuff, you know. So then we head home. We have friends that live in Mississippi. Well, we were in our motorhome, so we had to park over here. In the past, when we've gone to visit them, we've been in our vehicle and we just pull in up their driveway. Well, we had to park here. So we pull in, and right in front of me is this beautiful chestnut tree. I thought, wow, is that ironic? She was just telling me about chestnuts. So that's how this is how sharing this with y'all happened, because I found it so interesting and felt like just because it just grew on the East Coast and the Appalachian Mountains and stuff, it does grow in Houston County, Lufkin, Nacogdoches, and in northern parts of Texas. It likes sandy, acidic, loamy soil, which we have. The American Chestnut Foundation is trying to revive these trees. Okay, I'm ready for the video. This is a little 8-minute video from the USDA Forest Service, and I hope y'all get something out of it.
The American chestnut existed for approximately 10 million years in the eastern hardwood forests of North America, and it provided numerous benefits to wildlife species and other species in the ecosystem, and also was extremely important culturally to humans for millennia. The American chestnut, Castanea dentata, was thought to historically constitute 3 to 4 billion trees in the eastern hardwood forest of North America, and approximately 1/4 to 1/2 of the total tree density in forest where it grew. It was so abundant that other trees were actually named after it, like the chestnut oak, Quercus prinus. The historical range of the American chestnut was 200 million acres, which is an area slightly larger than the state of Texas. The chestnut's range extended from Maine south to northern Mississippi, and from the Piedmont west to the Ohio River Valley. The American chestnut occurred in over 40 different ecoregions and on a variety of site types. Oak, which is like a cousin to chestnut because it is in the same taxonomic family, Fagaceae, was the most common forest associate with the American chestnut. The best growth of chestnut occurred in cove forests, where water was not limiting, but American chestnut was most competitive and common on intermediate side slopes and benches.
It is safe to say that no other southern Appalachian species equals chestnut in the range of sites upon which it is able to establish merchantable trees or stands.
Historically and traditionally, the American chestnut was important for lumber and fuel wood and tanning in local industries. It also was a very important food source for southern Appalachian communities. The American chestnut has almost a mythic quality to southern Appalachian cultures. Many folks that have lived in the southern Appalachians remember American chestnut being part of their family farm. Family oral traditions are passed down where they talk about chestnut being on the landscape and that they would harvest chestnuts from them. They would also use chestnut for fence posts and lumber for their barns and siding for their houses. It's almost woven throughout their daily living experience.
What's it like to work with it?
It's pretty nice. I didn't even sand this. I just ran it because I wanted it to be kind of rustic. So I just put a coat of, I got 2 coats of clear on it, and it's soft. It's nice. Like I said, it's very similar to ash in the grain configuration, and I think probably because of the patina on the wood, it probably looks similar to walnut, but it's probably not. When it was original, it's probably not that dark. The patina has darkened it over the years, being out in the weather. Chestnut without the worms doesn't have much value.
Right.
The wormy chestnut has a lot of value.
Yep.
People really, if they ever want to buy the chestnut, they're going to want the wormy chestnut.
In addition to the cultural significance of chestnut, the species played a very important role ecologically. It was considered a keystone species, which basically means that without the species, the ecosystem would function very differently. The American chestnut provided a stable supply of hard mast in the fall by producing nuts that were high in protein content and fiber. Species like black bear, wild turkey, and white-tailed deer consumed chestnut and even preferred it over other hard mast species like hickory or oak. The American chestnut was probably a consistent producer of mast because it flowers later in the spring, especially compared to oak species. Flowers typically formed after late season frosts, which could damage flower and mast production. The effect that American chestnut had on insect species, like the appropriately named and now rarely seen chestnut sawfly, is relatively unknown. There is a lot we just don't understand about how American chestnut affected food webs, wildlife habitat, or other ecological processes like roosting for bird and bat species, or soil water availability and chemistry. The first non-native disease that negatively affected chestnut was root rot caused by Phytophthora cinnamomi. It arrived in the early 1800s, probably from Southeast Asia. American chestnut shows little resistance to this non-native pathogen. Die-off of chestnuts and chinkapins was noted as early as the 1850s and 1860s in the Piedmont region of the southeastern United States. The disease causes roots to atrophy and leaves typically wilt and turn yellow prior to the tree's death.
The chestnut was formerly abundant in the Piedmont region, down to the country between the Catawba and Yadkin rivers, but within the last 30 years they have mostly perished. They are now found east of the Blue Ridge only on higher ridges and spurs of mountains. They have suffered injury here and are dying out, both here and beyond the Blue Ridge. They are much less fruitful than they were a generation ago, and the crop is much more uncertain.
Chestnut blight disease caused by a fungus, Cryphonectria parasitica, arrived in the United States in the 1890s from imported Japanese nursery stock. The disease was first reported in 1904 at the Bronx Zoo in New York. The American chestnut did not evolve with the blight, so genes for resistance to this disease did not develop. By the 1950s, chestnut blight disease had virtually eliminated the American chestnut throughout its range. A tree that had existed for 10 million years was wiped out in less than 60 years by a non-native pathogen. So you can see underneath the bark it's kind of dead and brown, which means that it's killing the cambium layer of the tree. If I go up here and cut into the tree, you'll see a very different color because that's healthy tissue there, green and healthy, versus down here is brown and very unhealthy, where the blight is basically exuding that oxalic acid into the tree that lowers the pH of the tree, and the tree really can't handle it, and will eventually, the cells will start to die, and eventually the tree will be girdled completely around the circumference of it, and the top will then die. The chestnut blight enters the tree through wounds and natural age cracks that form on the bark. Cankers then form on the tree that often appear slightly swollen around the margins of the canker and sunken in the middle. The blight produces sexual spores that are easily spread by wind up to 6 miles, and asexual spores are spread more locally by rain splash. Spores are produced inside orange-colored stromata that protrude from the bark surface. The chestnut blight cannot live in the soil, so the American chestnut can survive by sprouting from old stumps. Sometimes these sprouts can live for decades, continuously dying back and resprouting as they are infected by the chestnut blight. Occasionally, an American chestnut will live long enough to flower and bear fruit. These trees probably have some low levels of resistance, or they have a blight strain that is weak or hypovirulent. These chestnut tree survivors provide very important pollen and genetic resources for restoration efforts that are currently underway to breed for resistance. The chestnut blight is ubiquitous and it cannot be contained. It actually infects other tree species like the scarlet oak, causing a butt swell at the base of the tree. However, the blight doesn't kill these trees. So even if there are no chestnut trees around, the blight can still be in the area on these other host trees. The chestnut blight is also a saprophyte, and it can live on dead logs for a number of years. Historical efforts to control blight through cutting around infected trees failed. Control through chemicals like fungicides are restricted to small groups of trees and are not practical on a large scale. The chestnut blight brought one of the most widespread ecological disasters ever known, but forests have recovered. The American chestnut was quickly replaced by other species like oak, maple, and ash to help form the forest we see today. The effect of the demise of the chestnut is not well understood. Efforts to restore this once iconic tree are underway.
So what is a gardener? We should be stewards of the land, and we should always pay attention to everything around us, the trees, the flora for the particular area. Every 50 miles you go, things change. Your landscape changes. The plants that grow change. I know chestnuts are not from this particular area, but it's important. This is how it looks on the tree. And I brought these to show y'all. October, they were still kind of green. Now they're dried up. So you can see how they grow with the nuts on the y'all that know me know I'm a hands-on kind of person. So this is the burr. Now within that burr, you're going to find three nuts. This is how the burr is. Y'all can pass this around. You probably don't want to touch them. You don't want to touch it. So my aunt also told me that this is what my dad used to do with them. Just a boy thing. So these burrs, what they say is you can, let me get another one. When they were on the ground around the tree, you can just take your foot and you can just kind of roll it and it kind of breaks it open. And I can't seem to get these open now.
Kathy, or chestnut, are they expensive?
Yes, they actually are. They're about $7 or $8 a pound when you find them in the store. You can find them already peeled and cooked at Brookshire Brothers in a little small package. Some people use them to make dressing. My family always roasted them at the holidays. And in New York City, there was always vendor carts where they sell them.
Are they like kind of?
What they remind me of is, you know, the purple sweet potatoes you can buy that have white flesh? It's kind of dry and sweet. That's what they remind me of. Okay. Can you try to do this?
You want us to break it?
Break that. I don't have enough strength.
You can step on it.
Well, try stepping on it and rolling it.
Stomp it.
Roll it.
Roll it. Roll it.
On the ground, it works really good. Okay, so there they are roasting. The National Forest Service is a federal agency that manages 191 million acres of national forests and grasslands. The Forest Service is the largest forest research organization in the world, and its state and private forestry programs provide technical and financial assistance to state and private forestry agencies. Its mission is to sustain the health, diversity, and productivity of the nation's forests and grasslands to meet the needs of present and future generations. And for more information, you can go to this website.
Kathy, so they're trying to develop
Resistance to
yes,
that
or
blight.
trees that are
Yes, that,
resistant to
yes.
blight, okay.
So the American Chestnut Foundation is currently working on that. My friend has lived where she lives in Mississippi for 15 years. And when they moved there, there was a lot of small fruit trees that were newly planted. And from what she can remember, she thinks this tree was kind of small. But there's other trees in the surrounding properties. This, I don't believe, is an American chestnut. I believe it's one of the hybrids that they've developed, like the Chinese variety. And I could be wrong. But in the spring, this coming spring, she's going to take a sample, because on the American Chestnut Federation website, you can actually send in samples and they genetically test them to see if they are American chestnuts or if they're hybrids. And I guess it helps in their research trying to restore and bring back this species. As you can see, it was a very important tree. It was also known as the sequoia of the East Coast because the trees were so mammoth. So in the 30s and in the 40s, when my dad and my aunts and uncles were growing up, I'm sure this was the American chestnut tree that I just feel sure that this was the American chestnut that they had. The American Chestnut Foundation is a not-for-profit organization funded primarily by more than 5,000 American and international members. Its goal is to restore the American chestnut tree to its native forests through a scientific research and breeding program developed by TACF founders. And for more information, that's the website, acf.org. So the restoration research of the American chestnut, part 2, Science in Action. There's another video to this one we just played. And if y'all are interested, go home and watch it. And that's the YouTube link to it. I don't know, y'all might want to take a picture with your phone. But there's lots and lots of YouTube videos on it about the restoration program and different accounts by different people, you know, and all the research. It's called Darling 58 is the research that is trying to genetically modify GMO. Here goes that word again. A lot of people get upset with that word. GMO is not always a bad thing. And that's what they're having to use is genetic testing and stuff to restore it. This is how it looks. And let's see. Okay, here's the 3 little nuts inside there. Here's what they look like. And the little ones that are in there with it, you see these little pieces? There's like 2 little pieces like this inside each one of those burrs.
That's
The burr is the female, and the catkin, which most of the time is on the same branch, that's the male. The catkin is when it flowers. And I just thought it was very interesting, and I hope y'all enjoyed and got a little bit of knowledge.